How does mother culture limit our self-determination, and what do we do about it? We decided to investigate how mother culture impedes self-determination by taking a closer look at how mother culture may have affected our own lives in the past, how we came to realize its influence, and what we do about it now. We've come to realize that mother culture has affected our thoughts when it comes to success, gender roles, identity, tradition, and our relationship to the status quo in general.
To me, one way to look at mother culture is seeing it as your shadow. When you're walking outside in the middle of the day or even at night around a light post, you can see your shadow following you everywhere you go, and you can't make it go away because it's part of you. By the laws of nature, everything casts a shadow, and therefore there will always be there in the presence of light. Mother culture works that way too, but the only exception is that it doesn't come from us. We come from it. Our way of living and the things that we do on a daily basis are governed by the so-called status quo. And it states that there are certain rules and behaviors that we must follow as a society in order to keep it alive. And questioning it would only mean that we are against it and therefore wrong. Mother culture impacts every aspect of our lives. Socially, we're taught to be good, productive citizens and always do the right thing. Economically, having a nice house, nice car, latest technology, etc. And politically, we must preserve our governing laws that seem to keep our society in check by any means necessary. It's this idea that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Everything that mother culture spoon feeds us is a definite truth, hands down, no questions asked. There is only one way to live, and we should all live it that way. Growing up, I paid little attention to the things that I considered to be normal at the time. It was those things that I took for granted through the constant repetition of the actions I thought were correct. I was taught to never question the teacher because they were always right. I was taught to color inside the lines because everyone would make fun of you if you didn't. I was also taught to be the best that I could be at whatever subject I was being taught. I could keep going, but the point is that we followed everything we were being taught without questioning it, questioning the authoritative source. So there was no room for self-discovery and self-determination at that time. And so mother culture's promotion of the status quo is what ultimately, I believe, impedes our self-determination. By not allowing room to think for oneself, an individual is guided by the intentions of mother culture and not their own. Not being allowed to question nature blocks them from ever realizing their own goal in life. Like I said, like a shadow, mother culture is always there around us, and we cannot escape it, but we can make it work in our favor by allowing an individual to question everything and letting them decide for themselves what they love to do, that at the same time will contribute to their optimal development so that they can begin to mold their own being, and so that they can also be successful in their own manner.
A big part of everyone's culture is the stereotype that men were supposed to bring home the bacon. They were supposed to work the professional jobs, and women were supposed to take care of the homes. They were supposed to cook, clean, and take care of the children. These gender roles that sprung up around the time of the Industrial Revolution here in the US is still part of a big rule that people are supposed to follow. I think that although things have changed and this rule has been broken by a lot of people, especially here in the US, there are still countries around the world that follows it. I think mother culture tells us, or a lot of women around the world, that they're supposed to marry young and depend on their husbands or partner, and these men are supposed to do everything in their power to provide for his family. Even as kids, we were taught that we were supposed to find our prince and they were supposed to take care of us. And that's one of the things I know I grew up to. And I think that nowadays people have been trying to confront mother culture and they've succeeded. There's a lot of people like me with a mindset of not marrying young and becoming a housewife. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it's one of the ideas people never really question. And in order to resist what mother culture is constantly telling us, there's people who wants to finish college, go to graduate school, get an awesome job, and so that they don't have to depend on anyone. And I think that America gives a lot of people those opportunities.
The overbearing mother culture tells us that we are supposed to act and look a certain way and that we are predestined to a certain path. From the day we are born, we are presented to a certain family, which means we're placed into their faith, their opinions, their traditions, etc. If we do not follow the paths they created for us, we are going 80 miles per hour in the wrong lane. There's no ifs and or buts. There's only one way, and that's the only correct way. From my own personal experience, I was born within a very conservative and Catholic Mexican family. I was lucky for having the opportunity to be part of a very loving family with a very rich culture and history. However, by being the only male within my family that could continue the last name, I always had this pressure from a very young age of one day having a girlfriend, one day getting married, and one day having kids. This is a conversation that always comes up whenever I go to family reunions or I talk with my mom or dad. So this is in a way this is their way that they're imposing their idea of the American dream upon me. Catholicism was a very important component in my life growing up. I got baptized, I got first communion, I was an altar boy for a couple of years. I was very involved with the church youth group, etc. I was involved in plays. So from a very young age, I was spoon-fed values and opinions that were very Catholic, very conservative, and sometimes could be a little bit problematic. Anything and anyone that didn't follow these morals were considered automatically a bad person in our eyes. No matter if they were actually a good person or anything. If they simply didn't follow our own morals, they were not somebody we would associate ourselves with. It was not until I discovered my sexual identity, was exposed to other views other than my family's, started to think on my own, and started to question my own ideas at the same time. Not until then did I realize that I was definitely different from my family, and there were many moments where I felt alone because I didn't feel like I belonged. I know I love my family, but at the same time I knew I thought different from them or had different ideas. So that made me, in a way, make me feel like maybe there was something wrong with me. So this made me simultaneously doubt my own identity. It took a couple of years of independence, self-reflection, squirming away from the arms of mother culture, and basically just not being as in touch with my family as I used to be, and finding my own tribe elsewhere. Not until then that I completely understand myself and realize that there's nothing wrong to being against my family's wishes for me. Although it might be hard, and it might be hard that one day they're gonna be really disappointed over me. At the same time, it is my life, and I should be allowed to live the way that I feel the most comfortable and happy. Although I might have gone against mother culture wishes for me, it's still part of me. I still consider myself to be a very spiritual person. I love my family despite their overbearingness, and I'm still very in touch with my own culture. I just simply had to find a way to balance my mother culture and mother culture's influence on me, and also my road to self-determination.
Mother culture limits our self-determination by telling us that there is just one way to be successful, and that success should come naturally to those who work hard enough for it. By telling us that there is just one way to be successful, mother culture limits our ability to decide for ourselves what success means to us, and tells us that if we don't follow the path that she has set up, we have inherently failed. This aspect of mother culture has personally affected me and limited my self-determination in the past, particularly in my choices of where to attend college. I went to high school in Coppell, Texas, and there was a general consensus that everyone there would be going to college. But not just any college, we were supposed to be getting into the top-ranked, big-name schools in the country. Junior and senior year, where you were applying to school, would determine who you were as an individual and determined your self-worth and ability to succeed. When I would hear of kids in my school who were either not planning on going to college or just planning on going to community college, I would immediately find myself looking down on them. Mother culture would tell me that I was better than them, that they would not reach the same level of success that I could by attending a top-ranked architecture school. Well, things didn't exactly work out as planned. The thing that mother culture didn't tell me was that attending a small private art school in New York City would be expensive, really expensive. My financial aid fell through, and the stress of paying for school, along with my first semester of architecture school in general, really took a toll on me. And by the time Thanksgiving came around, I was desperate to come home. I finished out my semester in New York and then came back to Texas feeling like the biggest failure. I thought, this was it. I had failed, and this would be it for me. I was unable to live up to mother culture's standard, and I felt that I had hit rock bottom. I eventually had an epiphany and decided that I wasn't going to let this setback ruin my life. I ended up attending community college in Dallas, and then later a smaller state school, UT Arlington. The two schools I had previously looked down on, mostly because I didn't understand. I went along with what everyone else was saying and didn't think to question that could be the best option for me or best option for someone else. I ended up graduating early after having a number of amazing opportunities, including having some really great professors and getting the chance to study abroad in Italy. So what do you do about mother culture's law of success, and how do you keep it from affecting your self-determination? Well, I would say that you should set your own goals and try to reach them, and know that if you fail, that sometimes that could be the best thing that ever happened to you. You only need to try to live up to the standards that you set for yourself, not the ones that someone else has set up for you. Once you realize that, you will be able to find success for yourself and not feel that you have been a failure by living up to or trying to live up to some abstract standard that the world has set up for us. And I think that going forward, I always find myself questioning like what I'm striving for and if that's really what will work well for me and not what other people will think that will work well for me.
Mother culture limits our self-determination by presenting us with a limited worldview. We are presented with the status quo and told not to question it. That's just the way things are. What to do about it? Expose yourself to as many perspectives and worldviews as possible in order to get as close to the truth as possible. Question what is presented to you. Does this facilitate my life in the way I want to live it, or am I just acting out a play that mother culture has put in my hands? Do not just accept the things that you immediately agree with. Challenge your own beliefs in order to defend them or in order to throw them out entirely.